Well, chances are you have seen or heard a land acknowledgement at some point in the past few years. Joining us now is Selena Mills, Indigenous writer and editor, who is here to tell us about an article she just wrote for locallove.ca about Indigenous land acknowledgements and why they matter. Welcome, Selena.
Ani, bonjour.
Now, the Local Love, let's start explaining that. Locallove.ca is a guide to living well and doing good. It's published by the United Way of Greater Toronto, and it offers smart and simple ways to give back as well as inspiring stories about change makers in the GTA. It also features challenging ideas and debates. And your post has gone viral. It's their most read post so far.
Apparently.
So let's start at the beginning. What exactly is a land acknowledgement?
Land acknowledgements are an honest and accurate way to really honor the original first occupants of a place. So in the case of Turtle Island, colonially known as Canada, it's a way to honor First Nations, Métis, Inuit, and Indigenous peoples right here with steps towards actionable steps for reconciliation. So that reconciliation is a big buzzword right now. And we here in Canada have so many loving people who really care about doing the work to get there.
So now many people have been exposed to land acknowledgements. Many have questions about why, what they're meant to do, and how we should interact with them. So tell us why you believe that they are so necessary.
It's really important to honor broken treaty relationships as well as the original first occupants of a place, and to respect Indigenous worldview and perspectives in regards to literally being related to the land, having an umbilicus to the soil of the land and where you're from. We many Indigenous peoples have the worldview and perspective that Mother Earth is our original first mother. And when our beliefs were restricted for so long, to move forward in the future and how we move together, that's a part of it. So connecting all the dots in regards to the history, the accurate Confederate history of Canada, so that we can move forward together in the future, honestly, is a first step. We can't have reconciliation before truth. And so land acknowledgements are an everyday, consistent way for the attempted erasure of Indigenous peoples of this land to be confronted.
So there are lots of differing opinions,
Yes.
even among Indigenous people and communities, about land acknowledgements.
Yes.
But you say you designed this article to keep that in mind, and it's not supposed to be definitive.
No. For example, I myself here speaking about land acknowledgements and Indigenous perspectives and worldview, I am not the expert. I do not, represent everybody's opinion, and we don't all have the same worldview. We have to take into consideration complicated things like the effect of colonization and indoctrination when it comes to religion. So we have many Indigenous peoples who hold very different values and beliefs. So I'm of the pool of Indigenous peoples who are, I'm not indoctrinated into religion, so I do believe in worldviews in terms of connected to the land and being related to the land. So that's a big thing to acknowledge, is that we don't all think the same and have the same opinion, just like any other cultural group. So I don't really know why we're expected to agree on everything when it's understood that other cultural groups don't agree on everything either. So that's a big one. And also our children. Another Indigenous perspective is the seventh generation rising, the next 7 generations of children. How are they going to move forward in the future together? How are they going to cohabitate on Turtle Island together in such a small way as self-introspection and emotional intelligence, doing that work? This is work that good human beings are accustomed to doing. So we would want to apply the same thing when it comes to reconciliation, land acknowledgements, doing our own learning about the history of Canada that we might not have all been taught as Canadians, and moving together to show and teach our children, even if we don't have kids. I think human beings, we care about future generations and how they're going to move forward together.
Let me ask you, you say that you don't all agree. What do you all agree on, though? There must be a nucleus of
What do all Canadians agree on? That's a tough question, especially in this time where we are in a period of great reclamation of our oral history and our perspectives and our philosophies. They were restricted for so long. So to expect a culture to have it all together and for us to be all cohesive and to be able to come together in a very strong way when we are really in this generation right here of this reclamation and this uprising, we're not all there. There's different healing continuums that Indigenous peoples are on in terms of being empowered and being resilient and strong. So I struggle to answer that question definitively because we're just in the middle of this really strong uprising.
Okay, so a lot of people say, I'm playing the devil's advocate here, say that I should not be held guilty for what my forefathers did.
Sure.
Now, a quote from the article that I really liked that spoke to that, it was, recognizing how generations before us have individually oppressed others doesn't necessarily mean we're admitting to being bad people today.
No, it's not. If we focus on that being the issue and making it personal about us, then we're forgetting the bigger picture and the greater work at hand, right? If we're making it about us as opposed to truth, history, frame it whatever works for you. If you're a business person who applies the same critical thinking skills to a business deal, or if you're a student in university and you're accustomed to having your work critiqued and graded, try to apply that thought process to this and the relationship and the work necessary with Canadians or amongst Canadians and Indigenous and non-Indigenous people. I try to apply that same thing when things get tough and you are required to do personal work and look at your own perceptions and your own responses and what really matters, what it really comes down to is how individuals talk around the dinner table or the boardroom table or at the office when they hear a land acknowledgement. That's the real work. That's what really matters, those conversations and those immediate perceptions in one's mind.
Now, recently there was student protest against the reversion to the previous sex ed curriculum, and some protests also included the decision earlier in the summer to cancel a writing session to enhance the Indigenous curriculum in schools. Tell our listeners why that's such a concern.
So, while we are not naive to the fact that, of course, these decisions come from perhaps people who are pundits of the National Truth Center for Reconciliation and the work that they've been doing and the work that roundtable committee members who were writing curriculum for those writing sessions and that got canceled. We're not naive to the fact that the backbone of those decisions comes from a place of bias and discrimination and just the disbelief that we need to incorporate Indigenous worldviews and accurate history when it comes to residential schools and 60s scoop and even things that are still happening right now today in terms of trying to control the Indigenous family unit, if we are not including that in the curriculum, then how is that history being honestly reflected for Canada? So much of the issues that we experience today in terms of Canadians trying to grapple with, this new information or how they see and perceive themselves as Canadians when they hear a land acknowledgement comes from a lack of education and understanding and knowledge about, the real difficult and complicated truths of what government and church and state has tried to commit against Indigenous peoples. So how do we move forward honestly? If that really matters, then how we teach our children, the history books need to be changed.
Now, you can find Selena's article. You go into a lot of these questions and explain. It's up now on locallove.ca. And it was also illustrated by the wonderful Indigenous artist, Chief Ladybird. Now, how can people connect with you, Selena?
Well, they can connect with me through Local Love. We are also doing a second segment to this see how I've struggled to articulate all of these big questions and big topics in a short 10-minute interview. That's tough stuff, and it was tough to do within this article to connect all these points. So we're making a second segment that's focused on the history of Tekaronto because Local Love's part of their mandate is to focus on the GTA. So they can find me there because I would love for people to see that beautiful video that Chief Ladybird is illustrating, and then we are animating. And they can also find me on Instagram and on Facebook. I'm very easy to find. Selena May Mills, same handle on all of the above.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for having me, Miigwech.
She said